In solo leveling, as Drippy-Woo administers the healing potion, the system alerts him that it will be ineffective if the target's health drops below 10%. Frustrated, Drippy-Woo demands to know if any of them can heal and insists they save his vice master. One of the men, the one with glasses, responds that they don't understand Korean. Dong-soo, having recovered, interprets what's happening, saying that Jin wants them to heal the injured boy. Curious, Dong-soo asks if this is Drippy-Woo's first time meeting him. Ignoring the question, Jin turns to glasses and issues a final warning. Nervously, the man explains that they need approval from their boss, but before he can finish, Drippy-Woo grabs his head and hurls him against a steel beam. Shaking, Blackie tells Dong-soo that they weren't informed about this guy's link to Jin. Growing more irritated, Jin sharply asks again if he can heal or not, but before a response comes, Blackie is frozen in fear under the pressure of Drippy-Woo's commander's authority. Sensing the tension, Dong-soo steps forward and accuses Jin of killing his brother, Hwang Dong-suk. Softly, Jin-ho warns his friend that this man is Hwang Dong-suk's older brother and urges him to be cautious, but Drippy-Woo cuts him off, telling him to stay silent. Dong-soo then demands a direct answer. Did Jin murder his brother and his squad? As the standoff intensifies, Jin coldly replies that he can ask his brother himself when he meets him in the afterlife. Enraged, Dong-soo charges at him, but Jin effortlessly dodges and counters with a powerful strike to the stomach. Dong-soo coughs up blood as he's sent flying, crashing hard into a nearby pipe. Before he can regain his footing, he sees Jin looming over him. Letting out a cry, he's seized by the head and smashed repeatedly into the metal pipe, blood splattering with every blow. Suddenly, Thomas Andre bursts onto the scene, shouting for Jin to stop, signaling that this match is about to reach a whole new level of intensity. Thomas Andre looks over at Dong-soo and asks if he's still breathing. For now, Drippy-Woo says. Since Jin seems responsive, Thomas proposes a deal. If Jin lets Hwang go, they'll let everything slide like it never happened. Unbothered, Jin asks what happens if he refuses. Thomas replies that he'll have to step in and stop him by force. Smirking, Jin tosses Dong-soo aside, fully aware that Thomas now has no option but to intervene. When Thomas questions if Jin even knows who he's messing with, Jin simply says, "It doesn't matter." This response catches Thomas off guard. He knows Jin is well aware of who he is, yet still chooses to defy him. Thomas, who grew up in a struggling immigrant family, was surrounded by hardship. He had nothing, until the skies gifted him something incredible, unstoppable strength, a power that made him unbeatable. Battle after battle, he proved just how dominant he was. He saw the fear in his enemies, watched his strength bend others to his will. That power brought him influence, riches, and absolute control. He lived like royalty, ruling through brute force. And when the world changed with the rise of hunters, he grabbed the chance to become a king in reality. Anyone who stood in his way was crushed. Anyone who disrespected him was broken. To Thomas, violence was the answer to everything. Now, with Jin-woo standing in front of him, Thomas is ready to show just how powerful he truly is. Meanwhile, the scavenger guild arrives at the battlefield, troops locking into formation. Suddenly, an intense shockwave explodes past them, sending cars flying and stirring up dust and debris. As the air clears, Thomas brushes off the concern of his men, signaling that he's fine. A guild agent shouts orders, telling the others to move and fall into position. Jin instructs his Shadow Knight to get Jin-ho to the closest hospital and to ensure he receives top-notch treatment no matter what. As Kaisel takes off into the sky with Jin-ho, the tension on the battlefield thickens. Thomas stands tall, backed by the full strength of the Scavenger Guild. Opposite him, Jin stands firm, surrounded by his massive shadow army. Eyes gleaming with anticipation, Thomas mutters that now things are finally getting interesting. He no longer gives a damn about Dong-soo. In his mind, there's only one way to reclaim his pride, by destroying the cocky bastard in front of him. Thomas Andre steps forward, telling Jin that if he admits he was wrong and walks away now, he'll spare his life. But Drippy-Woo answers him by showing his finger. Thomas warns Drippy Woo that he'll regret tossing aside his final warning. As tension fills the air, radiant energy surrounds the elite hunter army, while Jin's massive shadow army pushes forward. The tankers from Thomas's side rush in, forming a barrier of light that successfully blocks the first wave of shadows. Thomas doesn't wait. He charges through the dark army, smashing and slicing through the shadow creatures with brutal ease. When he comes face to face with Tusk, the high-ranking ogre mage, he launches himself upward and punches straight through his head, killing him in a single blow. Landing with a thud, he casually remarks how effortless it all feels. Locking eyes with Drippy Woo, Thomas lunges forward. One of Jin's shadows slides into his path, but Thomas roars for it to move and sends it flying with a single punch. Drippy Woo disappears from the scene and suddenly appears behind him, slashing at his ribs. But the attack fails to even scratch Thomas's skin. Surprised, Jin is then struck by a devastating backhand that hurls him across the battlefield. Thomas reminds him not to look down on national-level hunters. He uses telekinesis to pull Jin toward him, intending to crush him and show him the vast gap in their strength. But Jin resists, activating his own telekinetic power, stopping Thomas in his tracks. Confused, Thomas realizes that instead of being pulled in, Jin is forcing him still. Before he can react, Jin surges forward and lands a solid punch to Thomas's face, sending the hunter crashing back, stunned that he's actually bleeding. Thomas quickly regains his stance, but Jin is already charging back in, mocking his earlier arrogance. Drippy Woo unleashes a wild barrage of attacks from all sides, pushing Thomas to his limits. Now serious, Thomas activates Reinforce, increasing his speed and power even further. Meanwhile, the Hunter Bureau speeds toward the fight. The driver, tense and anxious, turns to Adam White, saying he needs to know what's happening. Civilians may not sense it, but one step closer could mean death. At that moment, Jin reflects on something important. There are 4 individuals who inherited the powers of the rulers. He suspects they are the same people who survived the infamous Kamish raid. And one of them is standing right in front of him, Thomas Andre. Thomas charges once again, raising both arms before slamming them into the ground, tearing apart the landscape with sheer force. Jin narrowly dodges the blow, but Thomas follows with his ability Capture. Hunters nearby scream for a retreat as Thomas creates a swirling black orb of destruction that begins to consume the shadow soldiers like a void. Jin knows that if it weren't for his own ruler's authority, he'd be dragged into it too. As the warehouse explodes under the pressure of their battle, Jin leaps up to the top of a broken roof, staring down at the chaos below. Looking up, Thomas says he won't miss this time. Chaos fully erupts. Members of the Scavenger Guild hurry to evacuate the injured, navigating through the ruins of their surroundings. In the midst of the mayhem, a man glances upward just in time to witness Andre launching off the ground, hurtling toward Drippy Woo at full force. But the Shadow Monarch responds with sharp precision. He steps on Thomas's head mid-air and propels himself away. Not giving up, Thomas activates Capture to drag Jin back. However, Drippy Woo counters by using Commander's authority, pulling back his fist for a devastating strike. Thomas pauses, asking if Jin seriously plans to face him head-on. Accepting the challenge with a grin, he powers up with reinforcement. Their fists collide in a thunderous impact, unleashing a shockwave that rips through the warehouse, sending both of them crashing through steel and concrete. Drippy Woo lands cleanly while Thomas erupts from the rubble, charging without hesitation. He aims a powerful punch, but Jin evades it. As Thomas's missed blow splinters the ground behind him, Jin grabs him by the horns and drives his knee into his face, fracturing his skull. Agents from the Hunter Bureau arrive just in time to witness the brutal confrontation. One of them warns Adam White that the situation is beyond dangerous and advises him to brace himself. Watching the titanic clash unfold, Adam is stunned as Thomas and Jin devastate everything around them. Realizing that the man fighting Thomas is none other than Jin-woo, Adam asks what can be done. The agent, stunned, replies that there's no stopping them now. Thomas is being utterly dominated by the Shadow Monarch. He wonders how a hunter classified as a magic type could have such monstrous strength and agility. Badly battered, Thomas starts to question the possibility of losing. Calling it unthinkable, he lunges again, preparing to tear Jin apart. But Drippy Woo blocks him once more and retaliates with a punishing punch. Fueled by his pride and identity as a symbol of raw strength, Thomas roars his name, demanding Jin stop underestimating him. But Jin, unfazed, strikes him with an elbow to the skull and calmly reminds him it doesn't matter who he is. As the battle draws to its conclusion, Adam pleads for Jin to stop. Drippy Woo answers with a relentless combo, shattering Thomas's armor and will. Finally accepting his defeat, Thomas slumps as Jin raises his fist again, then lowers it, signaling that the fight is over. Adam stands in awe, unable to comprehend that Jin brought down a hunter of Thomas Andre's caliber. He wonders if there's anyone else on Earth capable of such a feat. Maybe not. If the world ever finds out, the fallout would be massive. Calling for immediate aid, Adam urges a healer to tend to Thomas. But the healer admits he can't do it alone. Every bone in Thomas's body is broken, and he's bleeding heavily. Only someone at his level of power could even survive. Any lesser hunter would have died a dozen times over. Still, Adam tries to look on the bright side. No casualties. At least until another agent delivers grim news. Hunter Hwang Dong-soo isn't breathing. His heart has stopped, and Sung Jin-woo has vanished. Drippy Woo perches atop a tall building, quietly observing the city below. He mentions having used shadow exchange with Baru to get there quickly. As he looks out over the skyline, he informs one of his shadows that the city in view is Seoul, hinting at a sense of nostalgia. Meanwhile, Baru is most likely in America, doing everything he can to heal Jin-ho. Jin then calls forth one of his elite shadows, who addresses him with reverence. The shadow, formerly Hwang Dong-soo, humbly requests a name from his king. Jin reflects on how this man met his end because of his unchecked greed. With that in mind, he decides to name him Greed and asks how he feels about it. Grateful for the honor, the shadow thanks Jin, but is immediately commanded to place his head back on the floor, a firm reminder of his status. The next day, at the International Guild Conference, Jin arrives and is immediately surrounded by a flurry of reporters. A deputy approaches, letting him know that news of his recent clash has already spread far and wide. He warns that Jin won't be able to avoid the spotlight today, thinking to himself how this man crushed the scavenger guild so effortlessly. The deputy adds that the authorities have obtained statements from Dong-soo's former allies and that the Bureau will soon issue an official report. But Jin remains indifferent. He didn't come to America to dwell on past battles. He has a clear goal in mind. Once he gets the information he needs, he plans to leave without delay. As preparations begin, Jin is given a pair of earbuds to help with real-time translation during the meeting. Walking into the conference room, his presence causes a stir. Everyone turns to look at him. Dripping wet, he stands silently, his aura impossible to ignore. Follow for more.